Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Sharaad Kuttan. With me are Pastor Fergus Ong from SIBKL and Emmanuel Joseph from Projek Dialog. We're talking about Christmas because, of course, tomorrow is Christmas Day. Now, Fergus, I did mention earlier this idea that perhaps from a theological point of view, and I'm not an expert clearly, that perhaps Good Friday and Easter Sunday are much more important than a Christmas, and that historically Christmas has been a kind of ambivalent celebration for some Christian communities around the world. What's your take on that?
I think it's, I don't know about ambivalent, but I think that it's all part of a larger story, that Christmas is the birth of, as EJ said just now, hope, you know, of Jesus. But that birth represents the beginning of a work to renew the human heart and to transform us and to bring light into darkness. And that work which started on Christmas continues, and it finds its consummation on Good Friday through to Easter Sunday. So it's a continuous thing, and I would say that that in the wake of Good Friday and Easter, and you're quite right in pointing out that that is the day where we historically would really celebrate, because that's the most triumphant, if you can say, part of the entire, if you can say, human history.
Right. So let me put it this way. I mean, from a theological point of view, because I must confess I was a Christian and did practice religion for many years, is that Christianity itself and the different churches, you have the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, you have the Protestant denominations and a whole range of other churches that have evolved within the Christian faith community, that perhaps the narrative is different for each, right? Yeah. And we've had end of world theology, we've had all kinds of theologies, right, that perhaps shape that narrative differently. Is there one that is specific or most resonant for Malaysians? What do Malaysians, your congregants maybe, you can speak to, what is the narrative that they most are attracted to?
I think the narrative that we are all intrinsically attracted to is to find hope, to find a savior, to find some kind of meaning beyond the stuff around us. And I think Malaysia today, as is the case with most places today, we have a lot of stuff. We are fairly, we have access to a lot of things. But one of the things that we may not have easy or immediate access to is something deeper, meaning, hope, joy,
a purpose in life.
A purpose in life.
Yeah.
And I think that is the narrative that ought to be the central narrative of the Christian calendar, not just Christmas, but the Christian calendar for every Christian community, and I believe it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this sense of purpose is very interesting, Emmanuel, because one of the contributions of the Christian community on an institutional level throughout Malaysia's modern history has been the involvement of religious in school building and education, and also in healthcare. But schools are big. Schools are big because they shape minds in particular ways. Where is that sense of service going, especially since the government has largely taken over education, and the Christian schools have retreated as that institution that reflected the religion, right? Maybe not pedagogically, but at least in terms of religion. So where is this idea of Christian service going? Is there an evolution to it?
I think there is, and I think there's still a role to play, even in today's privatized schools. You see one in PJ. There's a school that's recently, I believe, your school, that has opened up. It's a private school.
Oh, St. Joseph's.
St. Joseph's, yeah,
but it's much secular, right? In some ways, I mean, this is one of the big challenges, I think, is where do Christian communities go, coming out of a colonial context in which Christian education services that were intimately kind of connected to a sense of what a Christian had to do in the world, right? La Salle brothers had their own philosophical outlook, right? So where does it go now?
So not necessarily that initially when these people started, they came in with know-how. So the mission schools were opened up, mission hospitals, mission orphanages, to fill a shortage where a young nation, we didn't have all this. So now that this role has been taken over largely by government and other religious organizations, other charitable bodies, I think that the role we can play is supporting these organizations, not just by funds, but also by the technical know-how, the pastoral aspect of it, the humanity aspect, the human aspect of it, the charitable aspect of it, raising funds, managing an institution, things like that. So maybe not so much the pedagogical aspect of it, but yeah, everything else.
What about you, Fergus? SIB, a church, I think, that really is from Borneo.
Yes.
Right? That's now national in character. What is that? Where's the service dimension of, or the, you know, of the church?
Yeah, sometimes I often get asked, what is Borneo doing in KL? We are a church in KL, and one of the things that we do quite a lot of is that we support and strengthen both physical needs and also spiritual needs, and in training and in coaching and all that. The needs of our sister churches, the SIB churches in Sabah and Sarawak. So we do quite a lot of that. Over the years, we have invested quite a lot of people, time, a lot of resources towards lifting up. Some are in really poor conditions. Some are just in smaller, weaker churches. So that's one of the things that we do. It's one of the expressions of how we want to have some kind of influence on this nation, or some kind of impact on the world around us. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned the mission schools and mission hospitals, because today, while we do no longer play that role, I think that education is still something that's very close to our hearts. And so I know some very good people working in special needs. I know people who are working with urban poor. I was just speaking to one of my friends who works with urban poor. He talked to me about how many kids are accustomed to stealing from each other. And they're working in very rough neighborhoods, working in schools, doing homework programs with kids from poor communities, working with refugees. So I think there's a lot of very good work going out there.
Yeah, so I mean, very quickly, you know, the Jesuit Refugee Service was something that worked here for many years.
Yeah.
The idea of service as opposed to the message of hope, some people see this as two different things,
right? Yeah.
How do you think of it?
I think they are not necessarily not related to each other. You know, like service, what does the hope translate to?
Yeah.
Now that we have this hope in our hearts, now that we have this message of a new coming of Jesus in Christmas, how does this translate to what we do in our daily life? I think that service is an extension of that, ostensibly, of that message that we learn, something that we pick up. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may jump in there, I think that we can, if we are the one who is giving of the serving, I think it's easy to see it as two different things. But if you're the one receiving that service, I think the hope and the service is exactly the same thing.
All right, interesting point. Okay, take another short break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned to Consider This.